this week's drive, we take the high-tech wheel, see a new Skoda, road test some leather, and wonder why. All this and more in this week's Drive. The opening round of the DTM Championship at Hockenheim saw rain falling as the cars came to the line. Mercedes-Benz driver Bernd Schneider took the lead from pole, ahead of his teammate Jean Alesi, making a brilliant start from the second row. Martin Tomzik held third in his Audi for half a lap until Mercedes driver Marcel Fassler drove past him. Alain Menu was lucky to get away with this in his Opel Astra. As the rain continued, the safety car appeared on the track and many drivers took to the pits, including Schneider. And reigning champion Laurent Aiello, making compulsory stops for tyres. Marcel Fassler didn't stop immediately and took over the lead, but not without his own problems. Once the conditions had settled, the safety car pulled in and Schneider led at the restart, followed by Alesi, Tomzik and Aiello. Spray made things difficult for following drivers who looked for drier parts of the track. Then the rain cleared and a dry line appeared, and Aiello's car seemed to handle the changing conditions better as he muscled past Alesi. However, some parts of the track were still wet and his efforts came to nothing, this slide costing him 2 places. Fassler moved into second place after the top three made their third and final pit stop. Poor old Menu was on the receiving end of a Schneider passing move and finished well down. Aiello had a race-long fight with Jean Alesi, eventually getting past the ex-Formula One star to claim third, late in the 71-minute race. 4 times champion Schneider finished in front, over 28 seconds ahead of Fassler, who was under pressure from Aiello, just 2 tenths behind. Alesi was a lonely fourth.
It was really perfect, pole position, a good start, and I was leading the whole time. The car was really brilliant in the dry as in the wet. Thank you very much for my team, they made a brilliant job.
The second round of the series is in Italy, with the 10th and final back here at Hockenheim in October. Over in America, Mario Andretti crashed during a practice session for the Indianapolis 500. Miraculously, the 63-year-old walked away from the crash unhurt, according to the team, co-owned by his son Michael. Andretti hid debris on the track from a crash by Kenny Brack, who was also uninjured. Mario retired 9 years ago, but he got back behind the wheel to test a car for the team. He did more than 50 laps with the fastest of 225 miles an hour. Mario won the 1969 Indy 500 and the 1978 Formula One World Championship in a Lotus. Mario, now the oldest driver ever to test an Indy car, said he wasn't trying to resurrect his career and couldn't see any circumstances under which he would drive in the Indy 500. Andretti raced at Indianapolis 29 times, second only to AJ Foyt's 35. The basic manner in which the driver controls a Formula One car is not so different to an ordinary road car. His feet dance on the throttle and brake pedals, while his hands steer and shift gear. However, technology has had its influence here, and a Formula One steering wheel is very different to what you'll find in even the most exotic road car. They're small, they offer a virtual command center, and they cost a fortune, about $60,000. In fact, the Williams BMW has the smallest wheel in Formula One, and the controls, all buttons, not switches, are arranged differently for each driver. Ralf Schumacher has his in a straight line, while Juan Pablo Montoya prefers a slight curve. The common factor is the digital display.
Naturally, even in a Formula One car, the steering wheel is primarily designed to steer. And when you switch on the ignition, you can call up lots of information on this display. 0 means 0 gear, or neutral, and 48 degrees Celsius is the current oil temperature.
Let's have a closer look. The drivers must have everything within sight and laid out in a logical fashion. The wheel controls many functions besides merely aiming the car. Changes in the balance of the brakes can be made at the top left. The fuel pump regulator is top right. A row of green lights warns when to change gear. The driver can activate the launch control for starting the race by pushing one button. These so-called electronic driver aids are under review as organisers try to cut costs in Formula One. The yellow button at the bottom right works the clutch and keeps the car idling. To the left is the yellow speed control for use while in pit lane to avoid speeding penalties. It also opens up the fuel filler flap so the pit crew can refuel the car, and switches on the flashing red light at the back of the car, which is also used in bad weather. The selected gear is shown in the left display. In the center, the driver can choose speed, engine data, or a lap countdown. The blue button at the bottom left changes the display, and on the right changes the fuel-to-air mix ratio, crucial to team strategy. The driver can also speak to his team, although two-way radio communications are also under review. On the back of the steering wheel are rocker switches. The clutch is only used on leaving pit lane, but the gear selectors are in almost constant use. In the old days, cars' steering wheels were big and often made of wood, but wooden wheels now are a luxury. Power steering systems and safety requirements have seen wheels get smaller, and they often have to contain an airbag and the explosive charge to deploy it, plus buttons for audio and cruise control. Some road cars offer Formula One-style paddles for selecting gears, but unlike Formula One, these wheels don't need to be removable too. Skoda, once Czechoslovakia's main car maker and now owned by the Volkswagen Group, has tested its new Fabia rally car, which will enter competition later this year. The new Fabia WRC was unveiled at the Geneva Motor Show and will be driven by Skoda's Didier Auriol, who's 44, of France, and Finn Tony Gardemeister, who's 28. Until it's ready, the team will race the Octavia, which has scored in 4 rallies this season. The new Fabia is powered by an updated version of the engine used in the Octavia. It has a 4-cylinder, turbocharged 2-litre engine and a semi-automatic 6-speed 4-wheel drive gearbox, controlled by push buttons on the steering wheel. The car still has a conventional gear lever which can be switched to sequential manual gearing if there's a problem. Information for the crew can be shown in digital or graphical form, depending on the function, such as RPM, cooler temperature, engine oil temperature, transmission oil temperature, oil pressure, or turbocharger boost. Auriol was the 1994 World Rally Champion and has a total of 20 World Rally victories, but Gardemeister has scored most of the points for the team so far this year. At the very other end of the rally scale, Senegalese women are taking their place behind the wheel at the Moussa Rally, held in the parking lot of Dakar's sports stadium. For years, Dakar has been the end of the annual Paris-Dakar Rally. Moussa means woman in the Bambara language, and here all the racers are women.
This is a discipline with very few female competitors, so I said to myself, hey, it would be good to organise a day in Dakar. So I did a small survey and found out that many women are interested in motorsports, but don't have the means to participate. So we started out by trying to find cars that we can give to our drivers, which is still a bit tricky, given that certain people don't have too much confidence in women behind the wheel.
They managed to get hold of 2 cars in fairly similar condition, and the first Rally Moussa was held last year. Mariama Barrow was the first to officially become Senegal's fastest woman. Her only experience had been driving herself to work and back, but the secret of her success is to just have fun. This year, 40 women turned up to challenge her. Most had husbands and children in tow.
Our idea is to cross regions and invite drivers from abroad, but we still need these proper racing cars. The objective is not to carry on racing in a car park. We'd really like to cross countries, have our rallies on real roads and on an international level.
A bit of pink paint, some arrows and tyres, and the speed track is transformed for the obstacle rally. Every rally is preceded by a reconnaissance, and this one was no different. But the reconnaissance for the Moussa Rally is more of a leisurely sightseeing stroll. Then it's time for the ladies to strut their stuff. It's hardly Formula One. The winning tactic isn't speed, but the cautious driving for which women are so famous. It helped Fabienne Nadjarin take an unexpected victory in the obstacle course.
We knew that there aren't many rally women in our circle, so this competition was meant to bring them in. It's in its second year, and I think it's an excellent thing, because it will bring them closer to what we do. Eventually, they'll be taking part in our rallies.
The Musso Trophy has already shown that African women could soon have a place in motor racing. And who knows what the future holds for racers like Fabienne. The second MotoGP round was held at the Fakisa circuit near Velkom in South Africa. Other riders, and especially his teammate Sete Gibernau, were still coming to terms with the death of Daijiro Kato 2 weeks after crashing in the opening race at Suzuka. Spaniard Gibernau will be the Telefonica Movistar Honda's only rider for the rest of the year. Kato's countrymen Tadao Okada, Nobi Aoki and Toru Okawa all raced with and against Kato, who was World 250cc champion in 2001 and was probably the top Japanese motorcycle racer. Most of the team's pits carried a tribute to the much-liked 26-year-old who lived for racing. Kato's racing number, 74, was emblazoned on all manner of equipment, from bikes to leathers and helmets. Norik Abe, another top-flight Japanese rider, spent time preparing the stickers for some of his rivals. And although Kato raced in the Premier MotoGP class, Yuichi Ii's tiny 125 carried the number 74 too. Many of the promotional events that would normally precede a race were cancelled as a mark of respect.
Yeah, obviously I'm very shocked and sad about him, because I know him for many years. We raced together pocket bike, mini bike, and All Japan Championship, and of course Grand Prix, and of course in 2000 I fight with Kato often, and still very hard for me to accept his death.
But the show must go on, and there are races to be won. Despite the somber mood, Abe and his Fortuna Yamaha got on with the preparations. Attention amongst the riders now turns to the safety precautions already in place and whether any should be reviewed. Several meetings have been held, but inquiries into the safety of racing at Suzuka will continue. The next day it seemed to be business as usual, as Italy's defending champion Valentino Rossi took provisional pole position. The bumpy circuit is at high altitude, with thinner air making for power loss in both engines and riders. Rossi shook off the effects of cold symptoms and a feverish temperature to guide his Honda RC211V to a pole position time well over a second inside his own previous record. His fastest lap came in the final moments of the session after Loris Capirossi had threatened to steal top spot for the fledgling Ducati team. Having had the fastest time until Rossi's final effort, the Ducati rider had no time to respond on Friday, but set the scene for a dramatic final qualifying session. The pace shown by the Ducati in only its second Grand Prix, and with no setup or tuning data from previous visits to the circuit, has humiliated the Yamaha and Suzuki factory teams. His teammate Troy Bayliss completed the front row in fourth. Sete Gibernau seemed to have put his team's tragedy behind him as he rode to a provisional third place, although he was lucky to get away with this off-track excursion after bumps on the entry upset his line through the corner. Toru Okawa escaped injury in a nasty free practice crash in the morning, but he was declared fit to ride in the afternoon when he set the fifth fastest time to head the provisional second row ahead of Max Biaggi, Colin Edwards and Alex Barros. Edwards, a MotoGP rookie on the brand new Aprilia Cube, embarrassed many of the regulars with works bikes. Spaniard Fonzi Nieto led an impressive Aprilia charge in the 250 class, with the Italian manufacturer taking the whole front row. The Spanish rider, runner-up to Marco Melandri last season, wanted to make up for a disappointing race at Suzuka and set a new pole record. Wee looked at his best in the 125s as he also set a new pole record, almost half a second quicker than his own previous best. He dominated the session, with only Spaniards Dani Pedrosa and Pablo Nieto coming close. But Sete Gibernau was a man on a mission in Saturday's qualifying session, taking pole position with a time which, eerily, ended with his dead teammate's number, 1 minute 33.174 seconds. This was only the second time he had held pole position in his professional racing career. Gibernau denied Valentino Rossi first place on the grid on an almost identical V5 Honda. The Italian, who's looking for a second win of the season following his victory in the Japanese Grand Prix, recorded a best lap time 2/10 slower. Like all the riders, Rossi had to cope with the bumpy Fakisa track, attributed to freezing nighttime temperatures in winter and over 40 degrees summer daytime heat. Max Biaggi was just 16 thousandths of a second slower than Rossi on his Camel Honda. Loris Capirossi crashed out of the session on his Ducati, but impressively returned to the track on his spare bike and set the fourth fastest time to complete the front row of the grid. Fifth and sixth places went to two Japanese riders. Shinji Nakano was the quickest Yamaha rider on the grid. Toru Okawa, who won last season's South African Grand Prix, was just 38 thousandths of a second slower than Nakano on the second Camel Honda. France's Randy Duponnet took pole position in the 250cc with a fastest lap time of 1 minute 36.247 seconds. Manuel Poggiali of San Marino, Italy's Franco Bottini and Fonzi Nieto complete the front row of the grid. Yuichi kept his provisional pole position with the fastest lap ever recorded by a 125cc bike at Fakisa. Pablo Nieto, Andrea Dovizioso and Alex De Angelis claimed second, third and fourth on the grid. Before the MotoGP race, riders held a minute's silence to honour Kato's memory, and then the start was delayed by 50 minutes when Kenny Roberts dropped oil on the track. At the restart, World Superbike champion Colin Edwards lost control of his Aprilia and crashed after colliding with Suzuki's John Hopkins. Jeremy McWilliams avoided Edwards but still fell off. The early leader was former World Superbike champ Troy Bayliss in only his second MotoGP on his Ducati. Bayliss led for 10 laps but ran wide, letting Sete Gibernau through. Valentino Rossi had to work hard to pass Bayliss, who'd overworked his tyres, staying ahead. Ahead was Rossi's arch-rival Biaggi. Once past him and into second, Rossi found himself 3.6 seconds behind, but flew through the last 5 laps to put Gibernau under pressure. It was Gibernau's second pole position and his second victory, by a third of a second from Rossi.
I'm the guy that has won the race, but this is motorcycle has won this race, not me. I think everyone, from Valentino to Max, all the riders, this is the best tribute we can give to that Giro, and I want to say thank you to all you guys, especially to my family, of course, and to my team, from the first guy, from Fausto, to the last guy, but not the least. Thank you for giving me the courage and the strength to be here and to win this race for someone that we will all carry in our heart for the rest of our life. Thank you.
With a win and a second, Rossi stays on top ahead of Sete, with Biaggi, Bayliss and Alex Barros matching their race positions. Ducati trail Honda in the manufacturer's title. The 250 race was to be a three-way Aprilia contest. Poleman Randy Duponnet went ahead of Manuel Poggiali and Franco Bottini, and the three gradually drew away from the pack. Poggiali got past Duponnet and withstood pressure from the Frenchman all the way to the line to take his second successive victory of the year. Poggiali was 125cc world champion in 2001. It was his 9th career victory and the second time in 2 years he's won in South Africa, having claimed the 125cc race last year. Franco Bottini took a lonely third, while Sebastian Porto held off fellow Honda rider Roberto Rolfo to take fourth. Poggiali heads the 250cc standings with a maximum 50 points, with Bottini already a distant second and Porto third, just a point behind. Aoyama and Duponnet share fourth. 125 pole sitter Wee led on his Aprilia from the first corner until turn 5 of the final lap, dueling with 18-year-old Daniel Pedrosa and Dovizioso, both on Hondas. On the final lap, Pedrosa slipped through on the inside, and as Wee tried desperately to retain the lead, he ran wide on the final turn, allowing Dovizioso and Steve Jenkner through to knock him off the podium. Pedrosa's fourth Grand Prix win by a third of a second takes him to the top of the World Championship, with Yankner and Dovizioso all just 1 point apart. A new motor that could decrease pollution and revolutionise transport received some heavyweight backing from former commando of NATO, General Wesley Clark, when he unveiled the Wavecrest system. The electric motor has been developed for use in bicycles, and several were demonstrated to local police officers.
You could put a motor like this in the wheel of a bicycle, a motorcycle, an automobile, a truck, a military vehicle. This is the motor that Detroit has been looking for. Modern technology, modern materials, digital signal processing, power electronics, and some really innovative thought.
The technology uses a single motor to power each wheel and eliminates the complex and costly internal combustion engine and transmission. The small, lightweight adaptive motors have implications for car makers. Vehicles could be smaller, lighter, and with more luggage and passenger space.
What we really want to do is be able also to go after the noise and chemical pollution in the atmosphere. This is a quiet system. It makes virtually no noise, and depending on your source of electricity, there's no pollution with it. So when we start with this system with bicycles and motorcycles and motor scooters in the third world, in countries like India and China, Southeast Europe and Latin America, we're going to make a dramatic difference, we think, in the cleanliness of the environment.
Wavecrest Laboratories say they are close to revealing a working model of a four-wheeled vehicle. And finally, answering a question that no one asked, is the hoverboard pizza delivery vehicle. Actually a one-person hovercraft, the hoverboard is made in Perth, Western Australia, and was first seen at the opening ceremony of the Sydney Olympics. But now, a commercial application might have been found. Domino's Pizza has begun testing the vehicle to see if it's more efficient, safer and faster than delivery scooters. The hoverboard uses a lawnmower engine to force air under the rubber skirt, and the operator steers by shifting his body weight. The designers claim it has a top speed of 25 kilometers an hour, using about 5 litres of fuel to do so, making it a very, very expensive alternative to a scooter. And the operator and the pizza still get wet and cold in bad weather.
I suppose we looked around and thought, you know, who could use the airboards? We thought the pizza guys, they'd be absolutely ideal. They've got difficult areas to drive, roads, pavements, we can whiz across through shortcuts, we can cross parks, we can go through little country lanes, we can go across lakes, rivers. We're looking at ice at the moment, working on ice.
This hoverboard is actually going to help us with delivering pizzas in icy conditions, snow, floods, and that's what we're actually excited about. And I think this is the future, basically, of delivering pizzas.
And the price? Well, if you have to ask, you don't need to know. Some more cynical than me might think that this test was a way of making a personal toy into a tax deduction. But whether you're a spinner, a crasher or a slider, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.